Hi, everybody, and welcome to Creepy and Geeky. On this episode, we're going to be talking about the Silent Night, Deadly Night 1 and 2 movies. Let's get right into it today. We don't have anything that we need to talk about in regards to things we watched or anything because we're recording this just a couple of days after our last episode that we recorded. So we just want to jump right in and figure out what the hell was going on with these fucking movies.
Naughty!
Punish!
Yeah, those movies. What? I mean, after watching Trick or Treat and Krampus, really great holiday horror movies, and then go into the Silent Night, Deadly Night movies, was just like, what? Now, I've seen them before, but neither one of you had seen them at all. So,
Well,
wait. First up, I want to get Katrina's,
okay, go for it.
Opinion on them as a whole.
Well, the fact that we had rewatched Krampus and Trick or Treat and the Evil Dead series, and you were awake for all of those rewatches with me, and the fact that you fell asleep during the Silent Night, Deadly Night rewatch, where I was watching it for the first time, kind of proved to me just how bad it was, I guess. You didn't seem interested.
No, it wasn't that. I had actually seen part of it the other day when Harrison was watching it. So I sat down and watched just a little bit at the beginning, and I think somewhere in the middle and a little bit towards the end. So I just seen some of it the other day, and plus I'm old and I needed a nap.
Okay.
So, but... yeah. So, but what did you think about it? Regardless of whether I took a nap or not, what did you think of them?
I thought it was really corny. I thought that the age gaps of the children didn't make sense, especially for Ricky. Like, the actors that were used for Ricky didn't make sense for what the actual age should have been for Ricky.
Just wait till we get to the Friday the 13th series. You're going to get some massive age gap stuff going on there.
And I also thought that the nudity was not needed. I think that there were at least 4 different women that I counted that we saw breasts. And so that's 8 boobs that I don't think that were needed at all whatsoever in the movie.
And they lingered a little too much on the hairy ass.
Yeah, they sure did. Sure did.
It was long lingering shots of like a pan way up from foot to head of at least 2 couples.
And then back down.
Yeah. It was like, wow, way to pad the runtime, guys.
Generally, honestly, kind of reminds me of Michael Myers as a killer because he just takes what he has available to him and uses that to kill people with.
Okay. All right.
And he doesn't really, I think
just
the one
weapons
thing
at hand, yeah.
I think the one thing that the movie does a kind of okay job at is portraying trauma and triggers.
Yeah. And I wanted to get into
that. Deadly Night 2.
Well, actually, I think number 1 does a better job at that than number 2 does. Mm-hmm. Number 1 seems...
Yeah, because Ricky
Ricky's just seemed to be more...
He shouldn't have had a memory of this stuff to have those triggers.
Well...
So...
Don't step on what I want to talk about.
Okay.
There's a lot
No. We're all going to be talking about it, but yes. But, yeah. No, number 1, because I wanted to talk about this specifically, that number 1 does seem to do an actual okay job at portraying trauma and PTSD and the lasting effects of that kind of ongoing trauma.
Especially childhood trauma.
Well, and because it's not just the trauma of not only was the grandfather traumatizing to him, telling him all that about, Santa being bad, then an actual Santa, like guy wearing Santa Claus outfit, killing his parents. Then, on top of all of that, he had the most whacked out Mother Superior person of all time who was just horrible and just compounded every little aspect of that rather than, helping to fix any of that. Now, it being the 70s/80s and stuff like that, it was more of that attitude back then of just grow up, they'll get over it, blah, blah, blah. Therapy was an option for kids and everything, but it was still kind of one of those things where it really wasn't done that much as it is nowadays, where you can definitely like try to help your kids in those instances.
Well,
So,
I mean, to that point though, I mean, the movie kind of criticizes that. The movie criticizes that form of upbringing. It is saying that kind of upbringing can be traumatizing to kids and can create
the traumatizing of being in the orphanage and being treated like
Yes.
that. Yeah, no. I feel like this movie was like, both movies really are a very bad indictment on the Catholic Church in a way too. Like, they really do not portray. Now, they portray Mother Superior badly, but Sister Mary was a lot better.
Yes,
Sister Mary was actually trying to help him and trying to treat the issues that he had, rather than deal with, other than just telling him to grow up and grow out of it. He'll just get over it, by being punished, all the time.
Well, yeah. So for the first movie, Silent Night, Deadly Night 1, I agree. I think that it did a great job on portraying, like you said, PTSD and triggers and childhood trauma. I wasn't expecting it from the movie, considering just the base concept of Santa Claus killer.
Yeah.
Wasn't expecting a very interesting and somewhat decent story of an entire person's life from childhood to adulthood, and figuring out that you're just going to go through a transformation when you get a Santa Claus suit put on you.
Right.
And so for that I give the movie credit. Otherwise, Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 1 is a camp fest, and is it's got all of the 80s horror movie tropes of lots of boobs, lots of violence, very bad writing. You're safe now. Santa's gone.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it was okay. I watched the movie. I'd rewatch it. I left Silent Night, Deadly Night 1 feeling like I could rewatch it and enjoy it around the Christmas season and take it for what it is.
I definitely did not have that same reaction to it.
That's fair.
I do not want to rewatch those movies.
No, you seem very bored through both of them.
They were very boring.
Now, I watched both of them earlier this year after I had bought them, and having rewatched them now, they are in regards to number one, I think number one is not a terrible movie. It's not great by any means. It's very much a, let's put Santa let's make Santa a killer for the salacious content of it, which, I mean, any slasher is kind of like that, where you're utilizing a holiday or something else. I'd mentioned this to you guys, off air, but there was controversy surrounding it back when it came out. Back in 1984, when it released, there was a whole thing, people who were trying to get it pulled from the theaters, and they did successfully. It only ran for 2 weeks in theaters before it got pulled, because parents groups just railed against it so hard. And it's like one of the few instances where something like that actually worked. The funny thing is, this premiered the same weekend as the original Nightmare on Elm Street, and did better. Its opening weekend did better than A Nightmare on Elm Street 1. But after that on the second week, when it got pulled, it dropped, what I read was 45%. So it tanked hard. And I think a lot of that had to do with the backlash on it. Because there was a lot of stuff. TV talk shows at the time were railing against it, and movie critics were railing against it. And it's not any worse. And it wasn't even the first Santa Claus as a killer movie. There were others that were before that. It's just silly to scapegoat this one movie, which wasn't even that bad. Wasn't even that terrible when it comes to Santa Claus as a killer movies. Having rewatched it this time, seeing it differently, because always on a first viewing for me, I don't tend to look too critically at a movie. I'm usually just watching it for the enjoyment of watching it. But on a second viewing, I caught the bits about trauma and about the actor did, I thought, a fair job of portraying that like trauma, like not as like
it was like partially trauma and also partially like a phobia.
Well, yeah.
Like the anxiety that he got from it was partially trauma related, but it also felt like
well, I mean, it's all part and parcel of it, yeah.
Santa itself. It doesn't seem like Christmas itself is
what
triggers
just
him.
Santa.
It was Santa, so I think
only Santa, yeah. Yeah.
Well, and the bits that really kind of stood out to me in terms of good acting in the first one was when the kid is cowering in the corner just before that long still frame.
Yeah.
But just before that, the kid's doing a pretty good job.
He was doing a pretty good job.
Being a scared little kid who's just trying to be good on Christmas.
Yeah.
And
not get beat by Mother Superior again.
And then the second one is when they hang up the Christmas Santa Claus banner in the store the first time, and there's just this subtle like facial like acting that the actor is doing in that scene that is really impressive.
I noticed that this time too.
It's a very impressive, just like slight aspect of fear and uncomfortableness.
Well, because go ahead.
When I first saw that, when they pulled out the banner and he started to do that facial thing, he was like shaking, which made me laugh because it was like kind of over exaggerated in a way.
Yeah.
Like I think it just could have just been the facial expression. I don't think that they needed the obviously tense shaking that comes from when you're like tightening up your like neck muscle.
Yeah.
It's like that wasn't needed to do that.
Well,
like,
I don't know if you
in
guys
my opinion.
Well, I don't know if you guys noticed it, but like when they first unroll it and it says Merry Christmas, he's fine with it.
Yeah.
He was okay with it.
Yeah.
He was actually smiling. And then as soon as they unrolled it and Santa Claus was on it, boom, attitude change. You know, and then, you know, Santa Claus is his trigger. Like that is literally the only the rest of the holiday time doesn't bother him. It's just that one specific trigger is just Santa. And then to put him in the dang Santa suit, like just tipped him over the edge the rest of the way.
Well, and also, like that's such a great, in my opinion, such a great switch for the narrative to have it be a like Dr. Jekyll moment of where once he's in the suit, then he becomes the thing he fears. Santa.
Yeah.
He becomes the punishing Santa.
Yeah.
And to me, I thought that was great.
Yeah.
I thought that was a great transformation. I thought that made sense for the character, and the plot led up to that moment.
Yeah.
And it felt somewhat earned when it happened.
Yeah. As much as the movies, like as much as this movie seems kind of trashy, kind of campy at times, it really does seem to have, upon further reflection, when you're really sitting back and thinking about it, it really does have some decent writing and some decent story beats to it. It doesn't hold up all the way through, but for the most part, it does hold up fairly well. Like it's definitely a decent movie that, you know, can be rewatched multiple times. It's there's another one, another holiday movie called Christmas Evil, and it's got another guy who has some trauma and dresses up as Santa and kills people. And so it follows along that like same kind of, not exactly the same lines, but the same kind of line of trauma leads him into this, and then like not in that movie, but at least in this movie, he became that which he feared.
Yeah.
You know, he did not like Santa Claus, but as soon as he was in the Santa Claus suit, he became that vengeful, punishing Santa Claus that just punished the bad people. And that's the thing you see in the movie too, when there was somebody good, like the little girl who said, "No, I've been good the whole time." He gave her a present. Yeah, it might have been a knife, but he gave her a present rather than killing her.
Yeah.
So, you know, he was definitely followed along his little moral lines as Santa. So it's interesting. It's not a for me, it's probably not something I'm gonna watch every year on Christmas, but it's definitely, you know, rewatchable. It's not. It's
the first one is
the first one. Yeah, the first. But here. Yeah. Okay. So Harrison wants to talk more about the first one.
I was just gonna say before we get to the second one, on the subject of the transformation, I think my favorite scene from that sequence is well, you know what Santa does on Christmas, and the retort, yeah, I know what he does. Yeah. And just because, and again, to the point of what I was saying about how it felt earned in that moment, right. That when he says that line, we do know what he does on Christmas. We know what Santa does on Christmas for him, and right. We know what's going to come. And so it's a great foreshadowing for the rest of the film on his transformation and what's going to go on and all that. Now let's talk about Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2 and how it has none of that.
So here's the funny thing, is that if I'm going to watch either one of these movies again, I'm probably going to watch Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2.
Why?
Okay, so only because Part 2 contains so much of Part 1, because they only were able to film so much of a new movie, and they used 40 minutes, almost half the runtime of this second movie was devoted towards flashbacks from the first movie.
It was flashbacks that Ricky didn't even have himself. It was stuff that Billy would have told him. Or Billy?
It wouldn't have even been stuff that Billy told him. It would have been what other people would have had to tell him.
Yeah, well, he said that Billy did tell him.
Well, Billy told him the stuff about the stuff when he was a kid,
about the stuff when he was a kid, but once he went into Santa Claus murder mode, then no. And so there was all that.
So that's the only reason why I would watch number 2 probably more, just because it's got enough of the information from the first one that you understand what happened. And then you get the rest of the story that's number 2. And the rest of the story that's number 2 is so fucking balls out weird that it makes you laugh more than anything. This second movie the first one is almost Oscar level compared to the second one, because the second one is so dumb. Ricky is just hamming it up all the time. Yeah, the evil laughed all the time. And this is why I don't say the second one is as good about trauma-wise, because yes, he's got the trauma from it, but
I thought, visually, it was interesting how they portrayed it in the second one, especially in the alley with the umbrella and
that was amazing.
The rag,
that moment is great.
The red contrast against the mostly washed out film was really nice, and that's what I liked about it. And also the same thing with the ribbon on the little girl's head riding the bike.
Yeah,
that red contrast really just brought out the fact that that's what the trigger was for him, was red. Not technically Santa.
Yeah, his was all red. Yeah, which was weird.
But I mean, to be fair, if you're a baby, then maybe only the color is what's
but you heard all the stories about your brother and everything else going on, and then your brother dies in front of... I know, but your brother then dies in front of you as the killer Santa and everything like that. Yeah. You would still think Santa would be the trigger, not the color red, but whatever.
Well, it sort of was, because there was that moment when he was with his adopted parents and they draped the thing over the
and the nuns were also an issue. So there was a lot more of that going on, that and that was fine. That showed that he also had his own trauma, because he was still stuck in that thing just as much as Billy was, up until he got adopted. Although it seems like he got adopted and Billy didn't. So Billy ended up staying in the orphanage till he became an adult and got to go to the store. But he got adopted by a family. The story's kind of weird. So he got adopted. No. He got adopted. Okay, but this is where the timeline is goofy, because this is what throws me off. Because Billy was 5 in the very beginning of the first movie when his brother was a baby. Then when they were in the orphanage, when they were kids in 1974, Billy was about 8. Okay, so then at minimum, his brother should have been 4 or 5, but he seemed old enough to maybe be 6 or something. In whenever he was shut up, don't talk about my brother like that. So it was a little weird, time wise. And then suddenly 10 years later, his brother's 18, and then Ricky is only 10. So the timeline with the ages is so stupid.
Let's disregard all of that. Let's disregard all of that.
I don't think we can disregard all of that.
And consider the fact that when he's the dishwasher, or not the dishwasher, when he is right after his adoptive father dies.
Yeah.
He's 17, and then he's 18 when he's the dishwasher, and then he looks like the adult Ricky.
Yeah.
What happened during that year?
I totally thought that was hilarious too, because you look at this guy who's like, well, apparently from what I looked on Wikipedia earlier, is the character was supposed to be 15 at the time of the murder, whenever he did the one with the driving over
car,
the guy.
yeah.
And so he was supposed to be 15 at the time, but then later on, when he's older Ricky, he's supposed to be, I don't know, I think it was between 18 and 22, somewhere around there.
But that's not what the voiceover says.
Yeah, so it's just, I know. So it
doesn't matter what it was supposed to be. Yeah, that's what it is.
It doesn't matter about any of that, because the ages don't line up no matter what.
One thing that
I just thought it was funny that they used a different actor to portray him just several years younger, or maybe a year younger, when it was like, dude, how would you change look that much?
One thing I really quickly want to talk about is that when he's doing the flashback about the Santa that's not Billy that dies in front of him, it's the same actor from the first movie that is Ricky, that the nun calls for. She says Ricky, and then he runs over there and she like pats him on the back, and you see that in the second film. They have that whole clip there. But then when Billy gets shot and they pan up from the axe up to his shoes, there's a cut, and they don't show that same Ricky from the first movie, and they switch to the one that they used for the second movie. But it doesn't make sense, because they still used a scene for that same actor as Ricky. So it's like, why
so
just
from
use
what
that
I read
old scene
what I
anyways?
read was that to do the sequel, apparently like the studio or the producers or something like that wanted the director just to recut the first movie and call it a sequel. They wanted them to basically recut that and not even film new footage, which was bizarre to me. It's like, how do you even do that?
Okay, I got to get out the other things that I got to say about this film. So we have the whole scene where he's talking to the psychiatrist about his past, and we get through all the flashbacks,
right,
and disregarding all of the age things and everything else, and the him growing up. Let's get into the actual once he's with Jennifer.
Okay.
So Jennifer, when he meets her, it's not so bad. It's not the worst, and we see a little bit, and then I don't even remember his name. It was we meet her ex.
Yeah.
In
Chip.
That's
Chip. What it was. Chip.
In the theater, which is strangely playing Silent Night, Deadly Night 1?
Yeah.
Specifically, the killer of his own parents?
Yeah.
I'm very confused.
Yeah. But they only show the part at the convenience store before anything else.
I know, but it's still confusing.
But the thing that I want to say, though, is that they don't... It's that Santa as a killer. It's not Billy. So it's like they cut out like that first part of Silent Night, Deadly Night 1 and then just continued it. That's what I'm assuming they did in the movie's universe, is that
the movie wasn't the retelling of his brother's story.
Yeah,
it was just separate weird Santa Claus killer story.
Yeah, it was a separate thing that just used footage.
Yeah, they weren't
from
retelling Billy's story. It wasn't a movie about Billy's story. It was.
I wasn't.
I know you were not.
Yeah, movie about Billy's story. I was more confused at why is the killer on the screen?
Because they were having to reuse footage, and they were like, "Hey, let's just insert footage here of this thing."
Yeah, they didn't
that's true. I guess they were having to reuse footage.
Yeah, they didn't want to film anything new.
40 minutes
of
the
bad.
88-minute runtime was devoted to reused footage from the first movie.
That's pretty bad.
It's really bad.
Then at that point, you really should just show them Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2, because
that's what I'm saying.
Otherwise, it gets really confusing.
You literally get almost all the beats in the movie. But real quick, let me go into something before you keep going into yours.
Go for it.
Holy crap, what was with Ricky and his eyebrows? Like, seriously, the eyebrows were doing all the acting. Like, every time he talked, it was like, eyebrow, 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 eyebrow. Like, he overemphasized everything with his... Like, early... The funny thing is, when he was first talking to the doctor, He wasn't doing that. But later on, as the story got going, he got more maniacal. Even his backstory, like, stuff was just like, eyebrows everywhere. It just like, and this was what I was going to say about him earlier, was in the first movie, like, he obviously, Billy transformed into the Killer Santa. It was like almost like a personality shift. Like, he was not Billy anymore.
Billy was not the murderous Santa until he put the suit on.
Ricky was Ricky the whole time. Ricky was killing for pleasure.
Yeah, Ricky was a serial killer.
Like, Ricky was straight up killing for pleasure. And just was like, and taunting and doing everything possible.
When he killed the person just taking out his garbage, there wasn't a trigger.
There was nothing.
Hang on. We don't talk about the killing spree until later, because I've still got stuff to talk about.
Okay, but we can talk about it. So, but that's just the thing. It's just like so many weird killing. Like, there was stuff that did not, like, he was killing just for the pleasure of killing. Well, and it had nothing related to Christmas, whereas the other guy was definitely like, people were being punished for their sins, for their being naughty. Not for their sins necessarily, but for being naughty.
Technically, Ricky was also killing because he thought people were naughty. And so there was an aspect to that. Every kill, he was always like, naughty.
I think 2 kills especially were not related to that.
Later on, yes.
For sure. I'm talking specifically about Garbage Day.
Yes.
And the car.
Yeah. And the guy just walking out of this house and going, what's all this going on?
Oh, so 3. Yeah.
Okay, so we meet Chip in the movie theater.
Yeah, just go back to Chip.
We meet Chip in the movie theater. We move on from it. Yeah. Like, okay, like, briefly. We introduce Chip, like, it's a foil for our character.
Chip the douche.
Like, Ricky is going to probably confront Chip because...
Oh my god.
What?
He's a chip on her shoulder.
I don't think they were thinking that much.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe that's just
I think
me
you're
making
overthinking it.
Yeah, but that's funny.
So we move on from the theater. Also, speaking of the theater, that guy was a douche.
Oh, the one in the back?
Yeah, the one in the back was a total douche. Very naughty.
I want to know where the friend went, though, that was, like, next to him. All of a sudden, the friend's gone, and Ricky's
there. That guy was his friend, or he was just, like, he sat next to him. Sat next to that guy, and that guy was just
but, like, okay, there were obviously plenty of open seats. If that guy's bothering you that much, move.
Also, let's talk about that theater. That was a really sad-looking theater.
Yeah.
Welcome to the 80s. It was Theaters back then were small and cramped and looked like that.
Well,
stadium seating did not exist.
Oof.
Yeah. It exists now.
Then we moved to the outside, and we got him in the blue sweater. We know what's going to happen.
You only know what's going to happen because of all the memes you've seen before.
But we know what's going to happen. But we don't know how it's going to... I didn't know how it was going to happen. This was my first time watching this film, so I didn't know what was going to go on. I just knew about Garbage Day, and I was excited to see the reasoning and how we went along. And I could never have guessed what instigated it and what started it all is Chip being a douche, and then him killing Chip, and then Jennifer fights Ricky, and then we're in a completely different movie. Everything before this point has been leading up to some Christmas-related murder spree. But no, now we're just killing people in the suburb.
Yeah.
And there's just no rhyme or reason to it. And I'm completely thrown through a loop as the audience, and I just don't know what's going on anmoore.
Yeah, no, it was completely a different movie. It was just a completely different slasher.
He kills Jennifer with the antenna, and then
the security officer comes up.
The officer comes up.
The dopey security officer.
Incompetent officer.
You know he's dopey by the fact that his hat was cockeyed when he gets out of the thing. Like, like, what the hell, dude?
Yeah.
Like,
so, how does that go again?
So then he takes the gun and then goes on a murder spree. And it's just, it was so disjointed that I had to take that entire sequence on its own. Like, I had to completely disregard everything I had seen prior to that point.
But you can't. It's still part of the movie.
But it's not, though. There was nothing, like, when we talked about Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 1, That movie had a plot. It had a story where we saw Billy grow up to become the monster.
Yeah.
Ricky, we saw him kill throughout his life and then suddenly just snap and just start going around a neighborhood killing people, and there was nothing Christmas related about it. It's such a weird thing to call this movie Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2. Well, because there's barely any Christmas in it.
Yeah. And to be fair, Ricky did have almost the same escalation. He grew up, he had some trauma, and then, he kills that first guy because the guy's like abusing his girlfriend and runs him over and everything. And then he just escalated from there. But then it just becomes escalation, like you said. Once he kills Chip, after that point, it becomes nonsense.
Also, do any of the events of Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2 happen on Christmas?
Yes.
Well, around Christmas.
I think it's around Christmas, but I don't know.
Because, there's definitely the Santa guy that he takes the suit from.
Takes the Salvation Army Santa's suit.
Never mind then.
But, yeah. But no, it's a totally, it's a totally different tone to the movie, because up until that point, it's going along the same lines of a sort.
We get creepy Ricky talking to the psychiatrist.
Yeah.
And then we get Garbage Day.
Yeah.
And it just goes off the rails.
Yeah.
But to that point, I cannot say that I've laughed harder than I did during that sequence.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically when the car blew up. Because,
3 shots into the window, one shot into the radiator, and that's going to blow.
The car blows up.
Now, don't get me wrong. In the 70s and 80s, Pintos were known to blow up, by being rear-ended, but that wasn't a Pinto, and
it wasn't rear-ended.
And it wasn't rear-ended.
I will say, the one aspect of the entire sequence that I thought was very appreciative, if you were counting the bullets, he fired 6 shots.
He did.
Yep.
And he was out of bullets.
Yep. They did not fudge that.
And it was like, for that, I give the movie credit.
Yeah, so another part that I enjoyed.
Hold on. Okay. So he shot one into the cop's head. That was one.
Yeah.
And then second one was that the guy going out saying,
"Hey, what's all the noise?"
Yeah, what's all the noise? 3 was the garbage man.
Day.
And then 2 were into the windshield, and then 1 into the radiator, and then there wasn't anything left.
Yes.
So you were wrong. You said 3 into the windshield. And
no,
1
I said 2 into the windshield.
No, you didn't. You said 3.
Okay. When I finish recording this, I'm going to go back
2.
and show you this, and you're going to cry.
Okay, well, also, you didn't say shots, you said sharts, so...
Well, maybe they were sharts. I don't know.
Right
we don't know.
So, moving right along.
So, anyway, what I was going to say is, after he's captured, then, we get to the point where we're caught up, timeline-wise, with the doctor, supposedly. Doctor's dead.
Yes.
Then he escapes through the thing. And I love it because everybody's yelling, "Oh, my God." And one guy's like, "Oh, my God, he's loose!" And it's like... What? Like, you're acting like he's Hannibal Lecter. Like, he's been on a short killing spree. It's not like he's a massive, like, serial killer, like some mastermind guy that
also,
you guys have to really...
Also, they weren't really keeping him well contained in the first place.
No! It wasn't like that door was locked.
Also, they weren't having him, like, in a straitjacket or anything
or
to
locked
protect
up.
them.
Yeah.
Like,
he's just walking around willy-nilly. At one time, the doctor kind of drifts off, like, in thought, and Ricky's, like, right there next to him, like, "Hi, Doc." It's like, the hell, man?
Yeah. So he breaks out, he gets the Santa suit, and then... he's going after Mother Superior.
Finally, at the villain of the whole piece.
Yes.
Because really, she's the villain of the whole piece.
Well,
the villain for them.
Well, absolutely. I think the movie is definitely, at least Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2 heavily implies that she's a villain. She's living in room 666, and she's consuming the communion wine. Also, what is going on with her face?
Like she had a stroke. What did it? Like, it said she had a stroke. That doesn't happen to your face when you have a stroke. That was like some weird, creepy disease.
Acid on her.
Yeah, it was some weird, creepy disease, like leprosy on her face.
Yeah.
Like, what? Like they just like literally like she lives at 666. She's a villain. She's got the creepy face. She's the scariest thing in this thing. Not Ricky. Ricky's just a troubled boy, you know?
Yeah, Ricky's the troubled boy going after Mother Superior who looks like a monster. And we get a fairly decent chase sequence inside of the ending of the movie. Yeah. And for that I give them credit as well.
Yeah.
Like him crashing through the door and like
and her like punching it and like locking it real quick.
Locking it, like that was really good. Like I actually really liked that a lot.
Yeah.
The final scene where it's Ricky versus Mother Superior, where he's got the axe and she's got the knife, and they're both egging each other on. Man, do I love Punish This.
Yeah.
Punish This was a great one-liner.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, he finished what Billy started.
Well, and here's the thing, like, obviously Ricky gets shot at the end, and, you know, other than him opening his eyes and smiling at the end, you would think he's pretty well dead. But no, you guys don't know this, but there's 5 movies that are Silent Night, Deadly Night. Only the first 3 are connected. The third one has Ricky again. Ricky's alive.
Interesting.
Well, he was in a coma.
I'm not interested in watching any of them.
I'm not interested in watching any of them either. But, yeah.
Is it just all downhill from here?
No, I've heard the 4th one is okay.
Okay.
That one's actually directed by Brian Usna, who directed the second Reanimator movie and some other
I knew Ricky
fun
wasn't
stuff.
dead, though.
Yeah, I mean, but
I
his
think
eye
smiled.
opened and he smiled.
I think the movie implied there was a little bit of
the movie
life
implied
left
that he would be alive, but I mean, he took some massive shots.
Oh,
to the chest. So I was like, I'm surprised he's gonna live. So, but yeah, it made it definite that.
Why didn't Billy live? Why didn't Billy live? Billy was more interesting.
Because Billy was the more tragic character. He had to die.
I don't know.
Ricky's the crazy, weird villain, but the actor for Ricky isn't the same one in the next movie either. So it's
Billy is the Mrs. Voorhees.
yeah, in a way, yeah. So, but yeah, overall, they're not great movies, but they can be fun if you take them. Like if we watch them all together, I think that if we would have had a fun time watching them all together, joking and everything. Part of the process of doing this podcast is I try to do it as much separately as possible for those who are listening to explain how we do this. Katrina and I tend to watch them together, but we try not to talk about them too much while we're watching it. And Harrison watches them with his wife.
Yeah.
And so we try to keep from talking about it too much until we can get on the podcast, so that we can have lively discussions like this. Because if we end up talking about it off air, then we forget what we're going to want to talk about on here. So, or we'll just have to talk about other things. So,
and with that said, though, I think my final opinion on the Silent Night, Deadly Night duology, in regards to just these 2 movies, Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 1, something I'd rewatch around the holidays. It's an interesting psychological thriller movie that I can get behind, and it's got some funny moments. I love the getting shot in the back with the bow.
Yeah.
I love the getting caught with the axe as the cop is going back up from the weird little basement. Punish.
He said naughty when he killed the cop.
I guess he did.
Okay.
Naughty
quibbles.
But I did thoroughly actually enjoy Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 1.
And like part one I could see being a rewatch. You know, if you're just wanting a fun one that's just kind of, you know, I think it's funny too, and I mentioned this, Katrina, real quick. All the songs in that movie seem to be created for the movie. I've never heard any of those Christmas songs ever.
Santa's creeping.
Yeah.
Santa's watching.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Like most of those songs were just like, what? Now I didn't find anywhere
was catchy.
Didn't research very hard, but I didn't find anywhere online that said yes or no that those were all original songs, but I imagine they were, just because I've never heard them outside of the movie.
You did say They did sing Deck the Halls.
Did they?
Yeah,
Okay.
at the end.
Yeah.
Mother's Superior got them singing.
Yeah, the kids sing
okay.
Deck the Halls.
Yeah. Well, that one's I'm assuming is public domain enough that they could get away with that one. But in regards to Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2, that one's more that one's more fun if you want to watch just for really almost just like the second half, the second half entirely of just from Billy meeting Jennifer on is just
absolutely.
enjoyable trash.
Yes.
Because it's just.
You mean Ricky?
Oh yeah, Ricky. Sorry,
Yeah.
Ricky. And so it's just enjoyable trash.
From the moment the psychiatrist says, "What about Jennifer?" Then that's when you should start watching that film.
Well, because
otherwise you can have it playing in the background until that point.
Because really, up until that point, it's really the first movie in recap. So,
but yeah, I would definitely rewatch the first one. Second one, that's a hard sell.
I don't think Katrina enjoyed either one enough to watch either one again.
I have no intention of ever rewatching them ever again, intentionally.
Right.
If one of you guys ends up watching it, I'll like maybe look at the screen for like half a second and then go away because they're such terrible movies.
I thought the same thing
because
because I was like, oh my God, I don't want to rewatch these movies again, even though I'm the one who suggested them for the podcast because I knew that we would get enough material to mine out of it for a good episode. And so it's just, but they're not like, but when Harrison was watching it, I got caught up into it a couple of times with the first one. Not so much with the second one, but definitely with the first one, you get kind of caught up in it. You enjoy some of the storyline, you catch things, and it's definitely a better movie than it should have been, and definitely a better movie than I feel like if it had actually been able to run its course and hadn't been pulled from theaters, we'd be talking about it more as a full-on classic rather than just a cult classic, and that's a shame, because it is an okay movie. It stands up there with a lot of the holiday horrors and stuff. So, but any last thoughts?
I think I've said everything I need to.
I think if the first movie had less nudity, I would be more inclined to watch it. I personally think that it was excessive, and
absolutely.
That is one of the biggest reasons why I won't watch it. If I'm going into a movie knowing that the movie will have nudity and that it will it is kind of essential to the story in a way. None of this shit was essential.
Well, here's the
none
thing.
of it, and I was not prepared for it at all. I was given no warning by you. So as soon as the mom's,
I try not to give any warning at all.
As soon as the mom's thing was ripped open, I was like, "Ah, motherfucker, there's gonna be nudity in this shit."
Well, I will warn you. I will warn you
that
pretty much any time there's an 80s slasher horror movie of any sort, you're gonna get nudity. 70s and 80s.
I just think in this case it was very excessive and very non-essential.
This wasn't even necessarily excessive, also, and I don't even think it was.
I don't want that.
Nobody wants the hairy butt, but I don't think it was non-essential. Like, it was definitely to prove the point that he felt they were being naughty.
But you can prove that in other ways without using nudity.
You can do it with using nudity, but also doing it with less lingering shots. You didn't need the long, lingering shots.
Almost on the verge of softcore porn.
Yeah.
The one scene when he's looking through the keyhole, I felt uncomfortable.
Yeah. Oh yeah, but that one and the dream sequence were just wildly uncomfortable. You're just like, oh no, why? Yeah. So yeah. But, sorry, I don't give warnings.
Okay.
You got to experience it completely blind.
Yeah.
So.
Anyways.
All right, guys. Well, that was a good discussion of Silent Night, Deadly Night Parts 1 and 2. For our next holiday episode, we are going to talk about Black Christmas and its 2 remakes. That should be a little bit more fun. The first one's a undisputed classic. It's not a favorite of mine. I get why people like it. I don't find it as interesting as it could be. The remakes are interesting in their own ways because they changed the story a little bit. It's not full on actual remakes, so I think you guys will enjoy those a little bit more. But until next time, stay creepy.